Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're doing something a bit different.
We are.
We're diving into a single document. It's a fascinating, though obviously sensitive, hypothetical scenario. It's presented in a file just called Untitled Document.
Hmm.
Our goal here is to explore, strictly based on what this document lays out, the potential consequences if India's current Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, were hypothetically to pass away while still in office.
It's important to stress that, right, we're sticking only to the points raised in this specific source.
Exactly. This isn't about us speculating beyond what's written, and definitely not about endorsing any view.
No.
We're just rigorously unpacking this document's detailed framework,
Yeah.
looking at how it sees this hypothetical event impacting, politics, society, the economy, India's global standing, step by step.
What's really striking, I think, is the sheer scope of this document's analysis. It tries to map out this potential chain reaction. From the very first moments right through to the long-term historical view, it touches on almost every major aspect of the nation. It really gives you a ready-made lens from its perspective to view the potential ripples.
Okay, so let's unpack that framework. The document starts right at the beginning, detailing the first steps. What does it say happens, in those initial hours and days?
Well, according to this source, the immediate aftermath would kick off with the President of India making the official announcement, probably via a press release.
Right, and at the same time, the document suggests the Union Cabinet would hold an emergency meeting.
Correct. And it specifies a declaration of state mourning,
Oh, well.
typically lasting 7 days across India, it says, with flags at all government buildings flown at half-mast. And naturally, a state funeral with full honors would be organized.
The document also mentions wider impacts, doesn't it? Like media and public life.
It does. It anticipates TV and radio switching to more somber programming, and potential temporary closures, schools, government offices, maybe even the stock markets for a short period.
So a very immediate, very visible national pause, really.
Pretty much, yeah, a widespread impact right away.
Okay, that immediate response makes sense. But then, the huge question.
Yeah.
Who takes charge? The source points out something crucial here. India doesn't have a vice prime minister.
Exactly. That's a key procedural point it raises. So the document details how the ruling party, the BJP, would need to convene an emergency meeting pretty quickly.
And what happens then? A successor?
Not immediately. It predicts the appointment of a caretaker prime minister first, likely someone senior from the current cabinet.
It names examples, I recall.
It does, yeah. It throws out names like Rajnath Singh or Amit Shah as possibilities, but stresses this caretaker role is temporary, just holding the fort.
Okay, so who makes the real decision on the new leader?
This analysis points directly to the BJP Parliamentary Board. That's the body it identifies as the key decision maker.
And once they choose?
Once they select a leader, that individual would then be formally appointed as the next prime minister by the President of India.
Right. Now, here's where the document suggests things could get. Well, really interesting internally for the BJP. It emphasizes just how central Modi is to the party's identity and its recent electoral success. His sudden absence, this material suggests, would create a pretty significant power vacuum.
A big one. And the document predicts this could potentially trigger internal leadership struggles.
It doesn't shy away from naming names either.
No, it lists several senior figures it sees as potential contenders.
Yeah.
You've got Amit Shah, described as a close confidant, Yogi Adityanath, noted for his popularity with the core base,
And others too?
and possibly more senior, maybe seen as more moderate figures like Nitin Gadkari or Rajnath Singh again. It sketches out different potential poles of influence, really.
It's fascinating how specific it gets there. And the document also mentions the RSS, right? The Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh.
Yes, it highlights their influence, often seen as the BJP's ideological parent organization. The source states the RSS would play a critical role in shaping who comes next.
A major behind-the-scenes player in this scenario.
According to this analysis, yes.
Okay, let's shift focus a bit. How does the document see the public reacting?
Well, given what the source describes as Modi's very large, very dedicated fan base, it even uses the term cult-like following. It predicts massive, widespread public grief.
You mean like demonstrations?
Things like large-scale candle marches, public mourning gatherings, prayer meetings across the country. It really anticipates a huge outpouring.
And it notes potential hotspots, too.
It does. It mentions the possibility of intense emotional reactions, maybe even some unrest, particularly in BJP strongholds like Gujarat and Uttar Pradesh.
What about political opponents or critics? How does the source see them reacting?
Initially, the document suggests they'd likely maintain a kind of diplomatic silence.
Out of respect.
Probably. Offering respectful condolences, perhaps, but holding back on political commentary at first.
This analysis also touches on something quite sensitive, communal harmony.
Yes, it raises that possibility. It suggests there could be a risk of communal tensions flaring up in some areas.
Why?
Especially if, as the source posits, certain fringe groups might try to politicize the event for their own ends.
And the government response, according to the document.
It anticipates a swift deployment of police and paramilitary forces in sensitive areas to try and maintain peace and order. A proactive security measure.
Okay. Looking beyond India now,
Mhm.
how does this document forecast the international reaction?
Significant. It expects a wave of condolences from global leaders.
Major powers.
Definitely. It specifically mentions anticipating messages from figures like the U.S. president, China's leader, Russia's, France's naming Biden, Xi, Putin, Macron as examples.
What about neighbors?
Yes, messages expected from SAARC countries, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka. It even mentions Pakistan.
Interesting.
And the source highlights that special recognition or particularly warm messages might come from nations where ties strengthened significantly during the Modi era.
Like who?
It lists Israel, the UAE, the UK, and Japan as examples.
And global media coverage. The document touches on that too.
It does. It expects major, extensive coverage from the big international news outlets, BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera, the New York Times, places like that.
What would be the focus of that coverage, according to the source?
Likely reflecting on Modi's significant role on the world stage, its diplomacy. It mentions highlighting his engagement in forums like the Quad, BRICS, the G20 summit India hosted, his international profile.
Right. Let's pivot to the economy. How does this document see the economic impact playing out?
It forecasts immediate short-term panic in the Indian stock markets.
A dip.
A sharp drop, it predicts, for the Sensex and Nifty indices, lasting maybe a few days as the news sinks in.
And the currency. The rupee.
The source suggests the rupee might weaken slightly, again, due to that sudden uncertainty.
What about big investors? Foreign money.
It anticipates that foreign institutional investors, that the FIIs, might temporarily pull some capital out.
Why?
Just while they assess the situation, see who takes over, what the policy direction looks like. A typical reaction to major political uncertainty.
And the broader business community within India.
This material suggests they'd issue condolences, naturally. But their main focus would quickly shift to seeking clarity.
Clarity on what?
On the continuity of key economic policies and reforms. The document specifically mentions things like Make in India, Digital India, those big infrastructure pushes. Investors would want assurance that the economic policy direction remains stable.
Okay, so short-term jitters, long-term questions about policy. Makes sense. Now, looking further out months, years, how does this analysis see the longer-term effects? It describes Modi almost as a brand for the BJP.
Exactly. It really emphasizes that point. His personal image and popularity, according to the source, are deeply tied to the party's recent electoral success. He's not just a leader, he's the central figure.
So without him?
Without that central figure, the document suggests the BJP could face some real challenges. Ongoing internal friction is one possibility it raises.
And maybe losing voters.
It floats that idea, too, that the party might struggle to hold on to its voter base, especially among younger people and first-time voters, who were perhaps specifically drawn to Modi himself.
Does it speculate on the party's direction? Ideologically?
It does. It suggests a potential ideological shift could happen depending on who takes over the leadership. Maybe a tilt towards a more hardline Hindutva stance, or possibly a move towards a more moderate form of nationalism. It leaves that open.
Interesting. How does the source see the opposition parties playing this longer term?
Cautiously at first, this analysis suggests, but then gradually they'd likely start rebuilding their own narrative.
Trying to capitalize.
Potentially, yes. The document proposes they might look to exploit any perceived vulnerability in the BJP. And maybe, just maybe, work towards greater unity, perhaps forming a stronger alliance before the next election cycle.
Which brings us to the really long view, the hypothetical 2029 general elections. What does the document say about that?
It's quite clear on this point. Modi's absence in this scenario would drastically reshape the political landscape for 2029.
How so?
It suggests the BJP would be forced to, well, fundamentally reinvent itself somehow, or become much more reliant on strong state-level leaders rather than a single national figurehead.
So a different kind of election.
Potentially, yes. Without a single dominant national figure like Modi, The source anticipates India's elections might become more of a multipolar contest, less centralized.
Okay. Finally, the document looks at legacy, doesn't it? How Modi might be remembered.
Yes, it presents that classic duality you often see with major leaders. On one side, supporters.
What's their view, according to the source?
They'd likely remember him as, a visionary, a strong nationalist leader focused on economic development, strengthening national defense, boosting India's global standing.
And the other side? The critics.
The source notes that critics would likely focus on different aspects, things like perceived authoritarian tendencies, maybe concerns around press freedom, issues related to minorities, or the overall health of democratic institutions during his tenure.
So a contested legacy.
Highly contested. This document concludes that historians will probably be debating his significant role in shaping 21st century India for decades to come. No easy consensus there.
And it anticipates physical memorials, too.
Oh, yes. The document lists quite a few possibilities for how his memory might be honored, naming things after him: airports, stadiums, roads, creating museums.
Books, film?
Books, documentaries, films, absolutely. And of course, potentially statues or other public artworks, a whole range of commemorative activities.
Right. So if we try to boil down the core points from this single source, just quickly recap its hypothetical scenario. What are the main takeaways?
Okay, according to this document, immediately you've got formal government procedures, state mourning, politically within the BJP, a major leadership transition, possibly a struggle, potentially redefining the party.
Public reaction.
Widespread grief predicted, but also potential for some unrest or communal tension in places. Internationally, a flood of condolences and intense media analysis of his global role. Short-term market jitters, definitely.
Right.
Longer-term investors looking for policy stability. Politically, looking ahead, the 2029 election landscape is seen as dramatically altered, leaving a huge gap.
And finally, legacy.
A deeply debated historical legacy, celebrated by supporters, questioned by critics, and likely marked by significant public commemoration. That's the gist of the source's predictions.
So, based purely on the picture painted by this specific document we've been discussing, the hypothetical passing of Narendra Modi isn't just presented as, the end of a PM's term.
No, it's framed as much more than that.
It's presented as the potential closing of a really powerful, defining political era in India.
That's the argument the source makes, yes. That his leadership fundamentally reshaped so many aspects: politics, society, foreign policy, how the government works. And so in this hypothetical scenario, his absence is depicted as leaving this profound vacuum politically, emotionally, institutionally, something that could steer the nation onto, well, unpredictable paths. Again, all according to this particular analysis.
It really is a striking thought experiment this document lays out, isn't it? Just exploring how the absence of one central figure, as described here, could potentially send such huge ripples across so many facets of a complex nation like India.
It certainly makes you think, based purely on this source's framework, about the sheer impact individual leadership can have on national systems, even global ones. What aspects of the scenario, as the document outlined it, stand out most to you as you reflect on it?
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, where we've rigorously walked through a hypothetical scenario presented in the source material you shared today. We'll see you next time.